So Dr. Mayank Singh, convener of the Kashi Manthan, esteemed members of the forum, my eminent colleagues, General Syed Ata Hasnain and General Shauqeen Chauhan, Ambassador Anil Trigunayak, distinguished China watcher Professor Srikant Kondapalli, our expert on radicalization and the terror dynamic, Dr. Adil Rashid. We have Dr. Jitin Jain with us, Dr. Harsh Madhok, the director of the Sun Green Group, faculties and students of the Banaras Hindu University. I see some army officers here, so colleagues past and present, the Commandant GCTC and the AOC of the Air Force Selection Board, management and students of Varanasi's legendary Sunbeam Group of schools. मुझे बताया गया है कि Sunbeam Group इस वर्ष अपने स्थापन की 50वीं वर्षगांठ मना रहा है। तो समस्त Sunbeam परिवार को मेरा अभिनंदन और बहुत-बहुत शुभकामनाएं। साथ ही आप सबको, the great audience here, आपको मेरा नमस्कार, प्रणाम और जय हिंद। Let me first of all say what a great pleasure it is to be here this morning and to be delivering the keynote at this conclave to commemorate our Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. Thank you very much, Dr. Mayank Singh and Kashi Manthan, for both the opportunity and the invite. May I also place on record my deep appreciation for citizens' initiatives like the Kashi Manthan for setting up these debates on strategic issues. राष्ट्रीय सुरक्षा के संबंध में जो काशी मंथन जैसे इनिशिएटिव्स का योगदान है, जो आपकी कार्यशैली है, वो अद्भुत और बहुत प्रशंसनीय है। And why do I say this? Because national security today is a domain of great complexity, sophistication, as also humongous change. The scale and pace of change in national security is as much, if not more, as in other domains. There is as much change in national security as there is in science, business, commerce, industry, and you name the area, name the domain. If there is change happening there, it's also happening in national security. So, if India has to attain its place and promise in the world, it will need minds from all domains. The defense services cannot do it on their own. We need academia, we need dreamers, we need technologists, we need startups, we need business, we need academia, we need everybody in this combined initiative to resource India's national security aspirations, its challenges. Only then will we be able to attain our place and promise in this world. In recent years, while significant steps have been taken in India, उसके बारे में आपने सुना होगा, we have in some ways redefined and reordered national security. जैसे आपने सुना होगा ये CDS DMA की जो स्थापना हुई है, in my view it was a game-changing step. और जो लोग राष्ट्रीय सुरक्षा में रुचि रखते हैं, अगर आपने अमेरिका के बैरी गोल्डवाटर एक्ट के बारे में सुना हो, तो CDS DMA was even more powerful than that. आपने देखा होगा जो ये भारतीय फौज ने बालाकोट में किया, जो कैलाश ने किया, they reflect new normals in our strategic outlook. पहले ऐसा नहीं होता था. You would have seen, those of you who are deeper students of national security, that in India, defense is moving out of the shadows of foreign policy. That is by itself a significant step. The vigorous embrace of startups and private sector for capacity building, the unleashing of the animal spirits, जिसे कहते हैं, of innovation, energy and enterprise, to drive the pace of military technological innovation through the mechanism of Atmanirbharta is itself, it is a game-changing move. All these seminal measures notwithstanding, national security still needs a constant churn in ideation and thought. सबसे पहले ये सोच विचार की लड़ाई. Through deep debates, through forums like these, through a revival perhaps of our own traditions of Vaad Vivaad, Tark Vitark, Chintan and Manthan. Argument, reflection and brainstorming, not only in other domains but also in national security. And therefore, initiatives like Kashi Manthan, which are initiators of this tradition, I would say, they are propelling this tradition forward. They are doing a great service to the nation. It is only through these deep debates that we will be able to find the right answers to complex operative issues of national security, craft creative pathways, and remain competitive in the wider strategic environment. मेरा मानना है कि राष्ट्रीय सुरक्षा के अनुक्षेत्र में भी लगातार गहरे चिंतन और मंथन की आवश्यकता है. We need cutting-edge ideation. Let me break a popular myth. Today, China leads us, and it does lead us in national security, not only because it is a better executor, but because it leads us in thought. Dr. Mayank mentioned this, when we offer this lazy excuse of India being a raucous democracy, and therefore we trail China, may not be a very good metric. There is this noted thinker, Kishore Mehbubani, who poses this question. He says, closed society, open minds. Open society, closed minds. Why should that be the case? So democracy should be able to think better, they should be able to ideate better, and they should be ahead of their adversaries. And that will only happen when we take these discussions which were, so far being held in the hallowed portals of Delhi to institutions like the Banaras Hindu University, to students like you, because you will determine India's national security futures over the next 25, 30 years. And therefore, these debates are extremely important. Additionally, national security capacities and capabilities, as we all know, are created and built over a very long-term horizon. जो चीन की जो PLA है, People's Liberation Army, if today it is a force to reckon with, it has been built diligently over 3 to 4 decades. It all began with Deng's famous 4 modernizations of which the military was a part, and today it is a cutting-edge military, a fact that is all recognized by America. It says that the PLA is an equal, it's a competitor in the Indo-Pacific and a long-term challenger in the world. So national security is built over decades. Hence, even as we focus resolutely on current threats, it is also imperative that we intuit positively and competently about the oncoming futures. हमारे सामने, हमारे समक्ष जो प्रकट मसले हैं राष्ट्रीय सुरक्षा के, उन पर तो पैनी नजर रखना जरूरी है ही. We must be conscious of the immediate threats, but साथ ही साथ दूरगामी सोच उससे भी ज़्यादा जरूरी है. The way we treat immediate threats, दूरगामी सोच उससे भी ज़्यादा जरूरी है और उससे भी ज़्यादा महत्वपूर्ण है. It is in that spirit that I speak today on securing India at the rate of 75 and beyond. And that is, some artistic license I will take with my mandate. I was told to speak on securing India at 75, but it has to be beyond. So our national security futures till the turn of the half century, in the time frame of 2047-2050, to include some of the makeovers in national security that we need, is what we shall try and reflect upon. राष्ट्रीय सुरक्षा में 2050 तक का जो हमें रास्ता नापना है, किस प्रकार से हम उस रास्ता को नापें, उस पर हम चिंतन करेंगे. But first, are national security futures predictable? क्या national security के भविष्य के बारे में अनुमान लगाया जा सकता है? And that is the first question. Because if they are not, why should we bother about looking into the futures? हम उसकी परवाह ही क्यों करें? अगर अनुमान ही नहीं लगाया जा सकता, तो हम उसकी परवाह क्यों करें? So in my view, national security futures are entirely predictable. जैसे I think Dr. Mayank Singh ने भी अभी बोला था, उनका अनुमान लगाया जा सकता है और उनका निर्माण किया जा सकता है. They can be predicted and structured. They can be predicted and crafted. That is the point I wish to drive home. Provided we think through the challenges carefully and care to distinguish between distilled views, verified perspectives, and groupthink. The biggest problem is groupthink. Let me illustrate the salience of the proposition. There are many in military history, but I think one of the most convincing examples is this story about a certain Brigadier General Billy Mitchell. Brigadier General Billy Mitchell. Ye kaun the? He was an American war hero and pilot during World War I, 1919, 1920, or even before that, 1914 to 1919. He was a strong opponent of air power. Un dino wo air power ki baat karte the. And he suggested to the American Navy then that aircraft carriers should replace battleships, then the long reigning kings of the sea. So battleships American Navy के पास थी, उन्होंने कहा कि इनको आप हटाइए और इनकी जगह aircraft carriers लाइए. In 1924, when he said this, only a stunt pilot would have considered landing a plane on a moving ship. उन दोनों ये लगता था कि ये संभव ही नहीं है. He was laughed out of the room. उनके सोच और उनके विचार की खिल्ली उड़ाई. He was laughed out of the room. A couple of years later, this futurologist and a brilliant mind predicted that the next big war would be fought between Japan and the USA. He predicted it. उनका मानना था कि जो अगला बड़ा विश्व युद्ध होगा या उसका जो प्रारंभ होगा वो अमेरिका और जापान के बीच एक घमासान के जरिए होगा. That was his prediction. He said it would be initiated from the air. And those days, what reigned in our thought was land wars. He said air. The theatre, he said, would be the Pearl Harbor. And within the Pearl Harbor, more precisely the Oahu Island, because his analysis was that the Oahu Island was a single island but a critical core, and if Japan hit the Oahu Island, it would cripple America's entire Pacific fleet. Now this was his boldness of thought and the precision of his prediction. In ensuing conversations, when Brigadier Mitchell with the American military top brass, when he persisted with his views, unka kya hashr hua? He was dubbed insubordinate and court-martial. Yes, court-martial. अनुशासनहीनता की बुनियाद पर उन्हें American force से निकाल दिया गया. He was thrown out of the American army. Years later, as we all know, on 7th December 1947, the Japanese did attack Pearl Harbor. The attack came from the air and was launched precisely on the island of Oahu. Embarrassingly for the USA, the Japanese sunk 8 American battleships, to include the mighty USS Arizona. 188 aircraft were destroyed and 2,400 American sailors and soldiers were killed. All that Billy Mitchell said came true, and with unfortunate but telling precision. जो भविष्यवाणी थी ब्रिगेडियर बिली मिचेल की, उसने हकीकत में तब्दील हुई. Years later, the US Armed Forces made some amends for their grave error by naming a bomber after Brigadier Billy Mitchell. So इससे हमको सीख क्या मिलती है? What are the lessons? Well, they are fairly obvious. Most organizations, particularly the military, are not ready to receive the futures, at least not easily, because the stakes are high, the dogmas are often very thick. राष्ट्रीय सुरक्षा के क्षेत्र में भविष्य का अनुमान लगाना मेरे मानने में हरगिज़ संभव है. Futures are entirely predictable. And I've just given you one example. There are dozens of examples like this. जो अड़चन है वो तकियानूसी ख्यालात की है, लकीर के फकीर वाली विचारधारा है. It is our refusal to change, status quoism and so on and so forth. So futures are predictable only if we have the wisdom to receive them. Provided we respect futurologists, if we develop a tradition of distal long-term thinking. And I think this is a good forum to make this appeal, because in recent years, this tradition in India has somewhat died. We don't think competently about the futures. ये जो रिवायत है दूरगामी सोच की, इसको जगाना बहुत ज़रूरी है, especially in the area of national security. Futures are predictable, provided we stop getting buried under the weight of groupthink. And see what great groupthink does. Groupthink led to the loss of 9 battleships, 188 aircraft, 2,400 soldiers. I mean, they were killed just because of groupthink. So we need to develop a tradition of cutting-edge ideation in national security. So that is the first thought that I would like to leave with you. the salience of cutting-edge ideation in national security. चीन के साथ जो हमारी प्रतिस्पर्धा है, the strategic military competition between us and China, I mean we call it strategic military competition, उसमें मेरा मानना है जो पहला पड़ाव, जो पहली चुनौती है वो सोच विचार की. Currently the Chinese are ideating better than us, and that is the tragedy. In 1980 or so, Chairman Deng made a remark. He said, so what if the Middle East is oil? We have rare earths. And today in digital combat, the rare earth processing capability is making a huge difference. In semiconductors, if some reports are to be believed, they have reached the 7 nanometer competence line, which will take military capabilities in 5G, 6G and AI to an entirely new height. And it has to come for superior ideation. So, अगर हमारी सोच दूरगामी हो, अगर हमारा चिंतन बेहतर हो, इस प्रतिस्पर्धा in this strategic military competition में हमें सफलता अवश्य प्राप्त होगी. And I would like to once again reinforce the point that national security futures are more predictable and they can be worked towards. तो अनुमान और निर्माण राष्ट्रीय सुरक्षा में दोनों संभव है. You know, I would also like to, just amplify this point by two other metaphors. In our personal lives, when we talk of luck, I mean, one way you can dismiss everything with luck. I was unlucky here, I was unlucky there. But General Dave Patrius, I've heard him making giving this lovely phraseology. Just listen to this. He says, luck is nothing but preparation meeting opportunity. So if you are preparing, if you are diligent, if you are far-sighted, when that opportunity comes, you will make the most of it and you will be lucky. And the gentleman or the lady who doesn't make the most of it will say that she is unlucky. If I may draw a similar inference in the destiny of nations, if you look at futures intelligently, if the quality of your ideation is high, you can create national security futures. You can lead national security futures. Why should we respond to China? We should be leading China. So you can create those national security futures. You can craft your own destinies. So that is the first message that, in all humility, I would like to convey to this audience. The second point that I would like to make, and I think once again Kashi Manthan is a great forum because we heard the great traditions of, ideation and the stupendous work that has been done. I'm told this place has produced 5 Bharat Ratnas in diverse fields. I mean, what an accomplishment. So in developing our strategic thought, while we must of course embrace modern precepts and global practices in national security, and they are changing dynamically, it would also be wise to engage consistently with the deep strategic wisdom of our homegrown culture and ancient texts. A good example of such a predisposition is once again, unfortunately, China and the PLA. Unfortunately, I have to quote from foremost adversity. So the PLA, and in recent times, the Chinese at the PLA have been diligent students of the writings of well-known strategic thinkers from the West, like Andrew Marshall. Great thinking, a great strategic thinker who advised 8 American presidents across the aisle. And he, is the architect of the downfall of the Soviet Union. He predicted in 1980, that the next big threat will not be Soviet Union, it will be China, and it will be China that will not rise peacefully. This was Andrew Marshall. So the Chinese have, learned a great deal from him. The PLA is quick to embrace modern operational concepts like multi-domain operations. And it was a pleasant surprise recently to hear the Prime Minister talk of this when he was addressing the Naval Swavalamban event, that event on Atmanirbharta in capacity building. He made this point about the need to integrate space, cyber, EW in our traditional domains of land, sea, and the air. So this whole business of MDO, the Chinese are brilliant exponents of it, as also latest trends in organizational adaptation and technological innovation. So they are imbibing the best traditions from the West. Yet, the PLA continues to remain deeply engaged with the homegrown wisdom of its own thinkers, like Sun Tzu and Confucius, whom we never cease to quote. So this is good. Take the best from the West, but never forget the homegrown wisdom of our own thinkers like Sun Tzu and Confucius. Sun Tzu thought continues to actively shape the PLA strategic military outlook and drive their doctrinal precepts. We must do likewise. जो हमारी जो सैन्य गतिविधियां हैं, उनमें आधुनिक जो चर्चाएं हैं, टेक्नोलॉजीज हैं, ऑपरेशनल कॉन्सेप्ट्स हैं, जो ऑपरेशनल धारणाएं हैं, इन सब से जुड़ा रहना, उनको अपने से जोड़ना, उन पे विजय प्राप्त करना, ये तो ज़रूरी है ही। साथ ही जो हमारे शास्त्रों का विवेक है, जो हमारी सांस्कृतिक विरासत है, उसके महत्व को नज़रअंदाज करना एक गहरी भूल होगी। Now let me just illustrate this with a few examples. If ever we needed evidence to drive home the strategic gravitas of our own ancient texts, Indian texts, here are a few examples. Take the business of realism in international affairs, or this question of where should the instrument of force be positioned in our strategic outlook. Now, for those of us who believe in the realist theories of international relations, balance of power, Western thinkers like Henry Kissinger, Hans Morgenthau, and John Mearsheimer, of course, have much to offer, and there is nothing wrong. They are great thinkers. But we will do well to also pay careful attention to the great clairvoyance of Kautilya in this regard, where it comes to this question of where should we position the instrument of force in our strategic outlook. This is a debate with which we've been struggling for years post-independence. And look at the clarity of thought of Kautilya. He says, यदि शास्त्र को भूलोगे तो अपनी संस्कृति खोलोगे, पर यदि शस्त्र is the weapon, instrument of force, शस्त्र का त्याग करोगे तो राष्ट्र ही खोलोगे. Now you may not necessarily agree with it, and that's not the point I'm making. You may think that the instrument of force is not supreme. But when you engage with Henry Kissinger, Hans Morgenthau, John Mearsheimer, they are great men, and I'll acknowledge they are great thinkers, brilliant thinkers. Also listen to what are ancient texts, because there is equal wisdom in those texts. ये विदेश नीति में जहाँ तक समझदारी से force और diplomacy के मिश्रण का सवाल, you know how you calibrate force and diplomacy in your foreign policy. There is of course the eloquence of noted American diplomat George Shultz, who says that negotiations are but an euphemism for capitulation. Negotiations are but an euphemism for capitulation unless the shadow of power is cast across the bargaining table. Brilliant. I mean, I think it puts it very well. But such eloquence is matched in equal measure by our own street poet Ramdhari Singh Dinkar. जाने माने जो हमारे कवि हैं रामधारी सिंह दिनकर जी, इसी सोच को कविता द्वारा उन्होंने और भी प्रभावशाली स्वरूप प्रदान किया. And since this is UP, this is Varanasi, I'm sure you've heard of him, those brilliant lines, but I should reiterate them when he says, "Sach पूछो तो शर्म ही बसती है दीप्ति विनय की. Strength induces good behavior amongst adversaries and competitors alike. Sandhi vachan sampuj usi ka jisme shakti vijay." If you have the power, the dice in world affairs rolls automatically in your favor, and your voice gets the respect that it deserves in international relations. So while we must applaud George Shultz, we must never forget the wisdom of a street poet like Ramdhari Singh Dinkar. And that is the second point that I would like to make with you, that even as we get modern in our strategic thought and we need to evolve, we need to embrace all modern concepts, we must not distance ourselves from the civilizational wisdom that we have. And here I think we have made some mistakes in terms of distancing ourselves from our civilizational texts, and they are equally reputed, thinkers from Tamil Nadu, from Maharashtra, and other places. So the whole force of our civilizational thinking, if it is suitably meshed with the manner in which we look at our national security futures, we shall become a great nation. Look at the span of our civilizational inspiration and influence. It's equally noteworthy. हमारी जो सांस्कृतिक विरासत है, जो सोच है, उसका प्रभाव इतना गहरा है कि जब एक वियतनामीज जनरल को पूछा गया, वियतनामीज जनरल when asked as to what or who inspired the Vietnamese most in their dogged fight against the mighty Americans, and I was surprised to learn this. What was his answer? He says, Lord Krishna in the Mahabharata. Since today we are in Banaras, Varanasi, which is, the spiritual epicenter. I would also make this point, and please listen to me carefully. We will also do well to perhaps explore the myth that Indians were primarily ethereal spiritual thinkers. We of course are very proud of our rich spiritual traditions, but Indians have also been adroit and crafty exponents of the conception of power and strategic cunning. The Arthashastra, for example, is a strategic work that focuses on worldly ends, advocating ruthless means to achieve and maintain power. Ruthless means. It encompasses the use of wit and intellect, as well as guile, cunning and deceit. Strategic cunning, so as to speak, in the national interest. This is the Arthashastra. Interestingly, the Arthashastra likens the conception of the state to an iceberg. The part that towers above its sails must be a beacon of majestic power, military might. But while the one that hides in the deep must be an embodiment of secrecy, duplicity, manipulation, and constant surveillance. So, when we say that the Chinese are clever, and the Chinese are cunning, why are we innocent? We also should be cunning. When it comes to national interest, Sam, Dam, Dand, Bhed, in the strategic foreign policy sense, its interpretation is national interest by means fair or foul. जो cunning है उसके साथ cunning. That is the appeal I would like to make. तो राष्ट्रीय सुरक्षा जो है, and for a young audience like this, may I share, this is some experience. ये उसूलों की लड़ाई नहीं, ये क्षमताओं का घमासान है, और इसमें एक ही असूल है, which I said, when it comes to capacities in the national interest, and I'm talking in the external horizons, not in the internal horizons, Sam, Dam, Dand, Bhed, which is, जिसका तात्पर्य मैंने आपको बताया, national interest by means fair or foul. So while we cannot publicly say it, there is a time when technology needs to be copied. Copy it, grow it, and then master it. That is what the Chinese did. We are stuck in technology transfer. Technology transfer is a useless goal. It has to be knowledge transfer. Otherwise, we will never be able to keep pace with China and so far as strategic military innovations. And here I'd like to give you one good example of why it happens and why this connect with academia between the military just has to deepen. In fact, China, the rejuvenation of the PLA has been structured entirely on its great engagement with the academia and the universities. The PLA has opened 300 labs today across universities in China, across domains. So from humanities to science to technologies, strategic thinking. The Americans have followed suit. They've got 280 labs like this across academia. We have made some humble beginnings. We need to intensify. But the point I was making, and this is a live story, there's a brilliant scientist in IIT Delhi by the name of Mukul Sarkar. He told me this story. So in 2014, he goes to IMEC. I don't know, IMEC is the leading institute in Belgium on microelectronics. And if anybody wants to know how important microelectronics are, the Ukraine conflict today, while it is about, combat skills, tactical prowess, strategic imagination, blood and gore of war, it is also primarily about microelectronics. Everything that is happening there, from targeting to imagery to long-range precision, it is predicated on microelectronics. So see the importance of microelectronics in strategic military affairs. So Mukul Sarkar attends that course, or whatever you call it. It was a degree program along with the Chinese. I forget the Chinese name. I'm bad with those names, but it's a gentleman with him, a friend of his. So they do this 3-year course. They become good friends, and they return to their respective capitals. Mukul Sarkar comes to Delhi, and this Chinese gentleman goes back to Delhi, and they are constantly exchanging notes. So the moment the Chinese gentleman comes back, because he's come from IMEC, he is made professor on day 1. Mukul Sarkar is told कि देखिए आप बाहर से पढ़ के आए, start from the bottom, नीचे से शुरुआत कीजिए. Anyway, चलो that's one issue. The Chinese gentleman is given a dole or a grant of research then of $10 million. Mukul Sarkar puts up a note saying that he needs so much money, 5 lakhs or something, and by mistake, because I'm told these chips, their burn rate is very high or some such thing, he puts a note saying that we need consumables worth 5 lakhs. And some enlightened bureaucrat on that noting says, we cannot waste money on tea and biscuits. For him, that interpretation of consumables is tea and biscuits. And so the story grows. The Chinese, he's told, and very honestly he says, I cannot work on this on my own. I need friends who were with me in Belgium. The Chinese government says, get them, we'll pay for their fare, we'll give them subsidized housing. And together this group, the central figure is of course the Chinese gentleman, but all those Europeans around him, they are the talent pool which are actively associated with the PLA today. They are powering microelectronics in PLA, and also they have made their billions. They are today, I'm told, a $1 billion company. Mukul Sarkar was made a professor last year, and if this whole startup issue had not been opened up by the Honorable Prime Minister, that dream would simply have gone a-begging. Now it is in the process of being rescued because of startups and all, and he's working. So this is what, unless this engagement with academia increases, militaries cannot grow. And once again, very surprisingly, in that same Sammelan, the Prime Minister made this observation. He says, हमारे IITs में तो defense से संबंधित कुछ पढ़ाया नहीं जाता. And पढ़ाया का मतलब ये, there is no talk, there is no engagement. Very happily, all that is deepening now. IIT Delhi, IIT Bombay, IIT Guwahati, IIT Kharagpur are stepping into this defense field. But we are late and we have to do, a great deal of catch-up. So, robust engagement with the strategic wisdom of our ancient texts, engagement with media, is the second thought that I would like you to mull over. Challenges that lie in India's security path. Let us now very briefly turn. I'm told your attention time is 10 minutes. I've already run into 15, so let me just hasten the pace. Let us now turn to the challenges that lie in India's security path. राष्ट्रीय सुरक्षा के सिलसिले में आगे की क्या चुनौतियां हैं? In our perspective, and let me put it this way, in our prospective journey through Amrit Kal, the 25-year period from now till India turns 100, an auspicious period, in my view, of great promise and opportunity, an opportunity whose salience the Honorable Prime Minister has underlined on more occasions than one, as also in the course of our aspirational surge towards becoming this Vishwa Guru. Now, what are the connotations of becoming a Vishwa Guru? They could be manifold, but key amongst them, I presume, would be economic primacy, technological leadership, is also becoming the military lead because we live in a very difficult strategic environment. So not only an economic and military power of consequence, but also a net exporter of ideas and global best practices in sciences, the humanities, economics, business, digital technology, strategic thinking, new age skills, and so on and so forth. It is in this domain that universities like the Banaras Hindu University can play a major role. We will not become a Vishwa Guru if we are, not economic leaders, if we don't have a powerful military. But we will never become a powerful military unless thought, practices, technologies are sprouted through universities like this. So our whole journey of, this becoming a Vishwa Guru is predicated on universities like this which do now. This is a tall order and a daunting challenge. Yet in our aspirational travel through Amrit Kal, a great deal does seem to be in our favor. We are in many ways in a geopolitical sweet spot. By and large, the tide of international affairs is in our favor. We are the virtual toast of the world. I remember 2 to 3 decades back, I think it was Manoj Joshi who wrote an article in the Times of India, which was entitled The Wallflower and the Dance of the Dinosaurs, which meant that here was this Indian wallflower, and the 2 dinosaurs were USA and Soviet Union. They were dancing in the hall, but they were not asking India for a dance. So we didn't matter now. We are the virtual toast of the world. Almost everyone and everybody seems to be wooing us. विश्व के हर कोने में भारत के प्रति एक नया आदर और सम्मान. That is something that you sense when you go abroad, when you meet people. That is a reality. We are also going through a period of remarkable political stability, extremely rare in a nation's history. Today, one senses the arrival of a unique... just 5 minutes. So with India well poised to realize its power and purpose. We could by 2050 become number 3 in the pecking order. And for various reasons, as I said, whatever we've done with Digital India, we've done some great work. For example, the vaccine. We produced it in 12 months. China couldn't do it. From the time we decided that terrorism has to be normalized, Look at the serene peace that prevails in India. I mean, that terrorism would not allow, we would not allow terrorism to be normalized. See what's happened. So a lot can happen, but a lot still needs to be done. We need to do a lot more, especially in the realm of national security, because dangers lurk around every corner. And let me now tell you, Mao and Xi are cast in the same mold. Realpolitik looms large in the strategic worldviews. Look at what Xi says. This is extremely support from Xi. Normally you would hear that economic primacy is the key. I mean, somebody said it is the economy stupid. I think it's Bill Clinton, but look at what Xi says. As important as economic prosperity is, it is military power that ultimately lies at the heart of state power. So that is how the Chinese look at power politics. That is the lens that they wish look through. So those 5 challenges that I would like to outline, China is the first challenge. And the first challenge is China. 2 is the pace at which we can generate technological innovation. Without technological innovation, especially in the military, we will not be able to match it with China. Challenge number 3 is civil-military fusion. Those days of silos are over. Today, most countries in the world, China, Israel, Turkey, USA, they are fusing capacities, civil-military capacities. As I said, everyone, startups, business, academia, dreamers, the military, civil servants, diplomats, everybody is coming together in this national security enterprise. And once again, a good metaphor here is, and I think once again it's from our ancient texts, which have told us to bring together Saraswati, Lakshmi and Durga. I mean, the convergence of these 3, it is so wise. Centers of learning, centers of wealth creation, and instruments of power. If they come together, our national security capacities will go through by an order of magnitude. And the 5th challenge is in creating and crafting this joint, calibrated, technologically enabled and ready instrument of force. Because that is the surest guarantee for peace. And now while each word is a descriptor, we all know getting joint has taken us the better part of 3 decades. And we are still not joint. You know, calibrating, optimization, talent pipelines, technology enablement, readiness. Russia was this great military before Ukraine began. And the moment Ukraine began, its readiness was unraveled. So these are the great challenges that we need to create over the next 20-25 years. As far as the Chinese challenge is concerned, just let me make one point, and I'll wind up in the next 3 minutes. That all that is happening around the LAC is of course difficult, it's a huge challenge, but it is my view that we will meet up to it. The problem doesn't lie there. The problem lies in what is happening beyond. The fact that the PLA today is transiting into a digital force, it is transiting into an AI-enabled force, it is competing and causing displacement anxiety amongst the Americans insofar as technology innovation is concerned. For example, in AI, in 5 leading metrics, the Americans concede that the Chinese are ahead of them. So it is in the technological domain, and therefore this innovation has to come. In space, we are focusing on orbital efficiencies in space. China is looking at outer space, Earth, Moon, Mars, which will mean a far greater degree of military domination. Now this Chinese challenge can be surmounted. We can do this if some of the things that I suggested. I'll give you just one example of asymmetric deterrence. America's budget is 3 to 4 times that of China. China's budget is 3 to 4 times that of us. But by all the restructuring that the Chinese have done, the technological innovation, civil-military fusion, with the same differential, they are causing displacement anxiety amongst the Americans. In the same differential, we also can cause displacement anxiety to the Chinese if we restructure, readapt, do technological innovation, so on and so forth. While budgets are important, it is not only about budgets. Also, you know, somebody mentioned this business of an enabling narrative. It is extremely important. The rise of the PLA has been powered by a greater narrative. And what is that narrative? The narrative briefly runs like this, that Mao gave us revolution, Deng laid the foundation for wealth, Xi will give us greatness. And look at this, how it is nuanced. It's the Chinese, or at least many of them are of the view, that we've had enough of wealth. The time has now come to convert considerable Chinese wealth into powerhood. And how do you convert this into powerhood? By unifying territories. So that powers the growth of the PLA, and the natural outcomes would be Taiwan, could be Taiwan along the LAC, and also in the IOR. So we too need, you know, an enabling narrative of this kind. This point of technological innovation I've made, I just write it with one example. So worried are the Americans about the Chinese pace of technological innovation that they have created one Army Futures Command. And where is that Army Futures Command located? It is located in Austin, in the middle of the Texas University and the Carnegie Mellon University. America's military's aspirations of AI are being driven by the Carnegie Mellon University and in other domains by the Austin, Texas University. And they have considered that they can match up to the Chinese only if they tap into the entire innovation engine around Austin, around the universities. And as we know, Austin, Texas is the land of Elon Musk. That is the kind of innovation that we need if we have to power our militaries. This point about civil-military fusion I have made. And you know, in many areas, we can, if we fuse capacities, we will do far better. I have also made this point about enabling narrative. We need a narrative, and we have a tradition there also, the tradition of the katha and the kathakar, so the story and the storyteller. We have to think through what narrative we need in national security. In modern parlance, we call it strategic communications. General Hasnain is an expert in it. We need this narrative to power, to inspire, to drive, to focus energies in national security and anchor it in some of these, touch points. Jointness, technology enablement, MDO capability. These are touch points, but we need to build a narrative around this. I think with this, I have, given you my thoughts and identified for you 5 key metrics which we may like to address in our journey towards, becoming a Vishwaguru. And the last point I would like to emphasize, somehow in India, we must build in India a strategic system that is benign but powerful, that is respected and admired. And here, what Guru Tegh Bahadur says, he expounds brilliantly on the sheer logic of power. When he says, Bal hoye, bandhan chhoote, sab kuch lage upay. When strength accrues, shackles snap, every move seems a step. So that is the sheer logic of power. So I look forward to that India, an India that is feted and wooed, an India whose every move is awaited with great expectancy and sometimes even with bated breath. So thank you and Jai Hind.